Chapter 9. The Problem Child and the Golden Gorilla. It was the fourth autumn since Louis Miller came to Minerva's. During his 3 years in the intermediate course, he'd overwritten his bad behavior with excellent grades, then almost ruined it with even worse behavior. Still, the problem child miraculously moved up into the advanced course. The attempted smoking of Adolphe Ferron would go down as one of the worst incidents in Minerva's history, but since Adolphe held part of the blame for burning Louis's uniform, Louis had just barely been permitted to advance. And right this moment, as a first year in the advanced course, he was. Go to hell, old rat. Don't you misbehave in my laboratory, you little brat. Energetically rampaging in Rutherford's room until the teacher knocked him to the floor. Carla, who had become a research student that year, looked down at the bruise-covered Louis as he rolled around. Then she sighed. Master, don't you think you're going a little too far? Too far? Ha! There's no such thing where this whelp is concerned. The stick is the best way to get him to grow. I'm instructing him in the way that suits him best. It had been nearly a month since Louis had enrolled in the advanced course. In that time, he had learned one new spell after another, smoothly improving his abilities. He'd further strengthened both his spells' precision and their power. Even joining Rutherford's laboratory had wound up a net positive for Louis. The man didn't generally order him to do this or that. One could say he respected his students' autonomy, but the truth was, he just didn't want to do any extra work. Louis had to come up with assignments on his own. But Louis enjoyed pursuing his curiosities more than doing whatever tasks someone else might assign, so Rutherford's teaching style suited him. Nevertheless, he brawled with his teacher on a daily basis, and his life now involved a lot more fresh bruises than before. Try not to fight so much. Carla pressed a moist handkerchief to Louis's swollen cheek. I'll be away for a while, so I won't be able to stop it. When the numbness finally wore off, Louis held the handkerchief himself and looked at Carla. You going on a trip again? Yeah. I wanted to travel to the eastern provinces next. Dragon's Peak is around there, too. Carla, now a research student, wore neither a school uniform nor a robe but heavy clothing suited for working outdoors. The genius who had developed the star spear seemed to prefer the open air to staying cooped up in her room. She'd even spent the long summer break out measuring mana density, large bags on her back. Oh, right, she said. I heard the first year of the advanced course is getting its very own prince. Louis remembered hearing something about that, too. Lionel, first prince of the Kingdom of R'dil, would be enrolling, and the whole school was abuzz. Louis was curious why royalty would bother coming to Minerva's. Complicated political affairs seemed to be involved. The original plan had been for the prince to enroll when advanced course classes began, but official matters had delayed him until the end of this month. Make sure not to pick a fight with the prince, okay, said Carla. Or say mean things to him. Or punch him. In fact, don't even get close to him, Louis, said Rutherford. Make a mistake and you'll be executed for real. Louis replied to their warnings with a sardonic grin and a shrug. Ha! Nothing good comes from royalty anyway. I wouldn't get near him even if you told me to. On his way back from the research building to his classroom, Louis encountered someone he really wished he had: an Adolphe Ferron, forehead bared, black hair parted down the middle. During their time in the intermediate course, Adolphe had picked many a fight with Louis, only to have the tables turned on him every time, and yet the boy still had it out for him. He stopped in front of Louis. Out of the way, uncultured bumpkin, he demanded. How about you move, retorted Louis. Exhibitionist. I've had enough of your crazy talk. Crossdresser. As violent rage welled up inside Louis and he balled his hands into fists, someone came running up from behind and got their arms around him. Fighting isn't the answer. I don't know what problem you have with one another, but take a few steps back, calm down, and talk it out. The arms restraining Louis were thick, muscular enough to hold him down. Whoever they belonged to had been through some kind of physical training. Realizing his thoughtless flailing wouldn't get him out of the pinion, Louis brought his head down, then whipped it upward into the person behind him. Don't get in our way. Whoa! A crack sounded at the back of his head, and the person restraining Louis let out a muffled grunt. He didn't release him, though. So Louis decided to do it again. But as he tilted his neck down, he heard a hoarse voice from behind him. Prince Lionel. Lionel? Wasn't that the name of the first prince who was supposed to be enrolling at their school? Louis looked at Adolphe. The boy's face had gone pale, and he was trembling. He looked like he'd just accepted his own imminent death. A moment later, a black-haired boy wearing a Minerva's uniform ran up to them. "Sir, are you all right?" he asked the boy restraining Louis, his voice low and hoarse. "Yes, I'm quite well." He looked at Louis. "Have you calmed down a little?" he asked, before letting him go. Louis stopped his tantrum and turned. Standing before him was a stern-looking blonde-haired boy in the same uniform as he was. Blood dripped from his nose. His face was familiar. "It's that golden gorilla." Louis had never expected that the golden gorilla he'd sold a bowl of soup to half a year ago would turn out to be the first prince. He was stunned. Across from him, Adolphe was still shaking. He quickly dropped to his knees and lowered his head. Please forgive my rudeness, Your Royal Highness," he wailed. "Hey, Louis, you beau, too." Lionel, nose still bleeding, shook his head. "No need to apologize. I was just passing by and stuck my neck into your business." "You did more than stick your neck in," thought Louis. Princes weren't supposed to go around mediating fights between delinquents. Rutherford had told him to stay away from this boy. But he'd involved himself in Louis's fight all on his own. How could Louis have predicted that? A stir quickly rose up around them. The teachers rushed over, calling Lionel's name. One of them yelled, "Not you again, Louis Miller." "Better scram before this gets ugly," thought Louis just before someone firmly grasped his arm. It was the black-haired servant who had followed Lionel here. Like the prince, he wore a Minerva's uniform, but he kept a sword at his waist, too. Holding Louis's arm with his left hand, the boy placed his right on the hilt of his weapon so that he could draw it at any moment. "I see you're wearing your uniform today," the boy remarked. "I'll rip your eyeballs out," threatened Louis, baring his teeth. The teachers surrounded them, looking horrified. A few minutes later, Louis had been knocked to the ground by Rutherford and ordered, along with Adolphe, to go pull weeds behind the school building. The day after the commotion, the golden gorilla, first Prince Lionel, arrived, together with his servant, at the same first-year classroom as Louis. "I'm Lionel Brem Edward Riddle. I'm looking forward to learning with you all." The tension in the room was thick as Lionel continued, his attitude sincere. "I know this may be a difficult request, but I'd love it if you could interact with me as a regular classmate, and as a friend." "I'm Nate Wall, his attendant," said the other boy in a near whisper. "Despite what the prince said, I would advise you all to exercise caution." "Thank you." Lionel's thick eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Nate, I told you there is no need for anyone to be cautious around me." "Sir, for many, exercising caution brings peace of mind. I humbly ask your understanding." "Chm. Is that how it is? I'm sorry." Lionel withdrew without complaint. Their relationship seemed a bit unusual for a master and servant. The kingdom of Riddle had 3 princes in all, but they were far apart in age. Second Prince Felix would be 7 this year, and third Prince Albert was turning 3. For that reason, many saw Lionel as the only real candidate to succeed, and several students, the children of prominent nobles, officially greeted him during the break. As Louis observed them, he was a bit surprised. "Less than I thought," he noted to himself. Louis had expected everyone to be falling over each other, swarming the prince, trying to get into his good graces, but almost nobody did. Even Adolphe Ferron, who loved to stand out, gave Lionel only a simple greeting, then apologized for the day before and went back to his seat. "Guess they're scared of his gorilla face," Louis mumbled. That was very rude. He felt a hand pull on his ear. Rosalie was staring at him with a frightening look. "I mean, he's a prince," Louis complained. "Isn't everyone supposed to be going nuts right now?" "No. They know it isn't their place to do so." Are you sure that's all it is? Asked Louis, lowering his voice. He honestly wasn't interested in the affairs of noble society, but he also didn't want to get involved in any unnecessary trouble at school. Of course, if someone picked a fight with him, he'd always rise to the occasion. The fanciest school in the kingdom is Serendia Academy, isn't it? He continued. Why didn't he go there? He must be really interested in magecraft to specifically choose Minerva's. The Duke of Clockford is the director of Serendia Academy, explained Rosalie. He's the second prince's grandfather. And Minerva's is fairly neutral, politically speaking. Louis pursed his lips, forgetting that they were split. He scowled in pain. Rutherford had punched him so much yesterday that it hurt literally everywhere. In other words, he thought, licking his cut lip, Duke Clockford and the first prince don't like each other. This Duke guy must really want to get his cute little grandson into the big chair. Louis had heard that second Prince Felix was sickly, though. Apparently, the boy lived at his grandfather's mansion under constant care. No prince that frail could ever take the throne. Or maybe the Duke just wants to use him as a puppet. Either way, it had nothing to do with Louis. He did have something else to ask Rosalie, though. Hey, does Adolphe's family suck up to this Duke Clockford guy? I've heard they're on good terms, yes. I see. That had Louis convinced. Those like Adolphe, whose parents were close to Duke Clockford, couldn't simply be friends with Lionel. Nor could they act rudely to a prince, of course. That was why Adolphe had kept his greeting minimal and was trying to maintain his distance. Louis looked around the classroom and saw a surprising number of other kids acting the same way. The second and third princes must have a lot of power behind them, he mused idly. Today, you will all compete in one-on-one magic battles. Please pair up with someone nearby. Solo, the magic battle teacher, was a woman in her mid-40s with a hard expression and a militaristic attitude. But she could be surprisingly whimsical, and she tended to switch up how she arranged the students from day to day. Some days she would decide teams herself, others, she'd have everyone draw lots. Today, she let everyone pair up on their own. As soon as the word nearby left Solo's lips, the other students all moved away from Louis. The message was painfully obvious, they really didn't want to fight him. Well, that's fine, too, I guess. Whoever was left over would fight the teacher, which was what Louis wanted anyway. Solo generally had another teacher assisting her for magic battle class. Today, instead of Rutherford, it was a younger mage. Louis expected he'd end up fighting one of the two. Until Lionel addressed him, that is. Excuse me, he said. Would you be willing to fight me in a magic battle? Huh. Louis frowned. There were grave consequences for incurring a royal's displeasure. He understood why nobody else wanted to pair up with Lionel. But the prince's attendant Nate took this class with him. The black-haired boy had extricated himself from the ring of students and now stood over in one corner of the training grounds. Louis gestured toward him with his jaw. Can't you fight him? Nate is exempt from magic battle class, explained Lionel. It's so he can protect me. Right, thought Louis. There was a greater risk of assassination while they were outside battling than when they were inside, studying at their desks. Everyone around them watched their exchange with bated breath. Eventually, as Louis was tossing the idea around, Lionel straightened up, put his hand on his breast, and said, I am Lionel Brem Edward Riddell. Yeah, I know, replied Louis. Would you do me the favor of telling me your name? So earnest, he thought, making sure to give his own name before asking for someone else's. It's Louis Miller, he mumbled, looking exhausted. I see. A valiant name indeed. Louis honestly wasn't sure what to make of the guy. He'd never met anyone like him before. Were all royals like this? Lionel watched Louis with wide, round eyes, then something occurred to him. Ah, yes. I knew I'd met you somewhere before. Hey. You were manning the soup stall at the festival half a year ago, weren't you? Why were you dressed like that? Louis grimaced. Veins rising to the surface of his temple, he quickly walked straight up to Lionel. You'd better drop that right now. Fine. Magic battle. Let's do it. Louis Miller, the preeminent problem child of Minerva's, was about to fight the prince. Many shuddered at the unexpected development, with a few who thought poorly of Louis snickering as they imagined what sort of punishment he'd receive. Meanwhile, Solo adopted her usual bold attitude. "Very well," she announced. "We'll do the first 5 pairs now. Come with me to the starting position." Limited class time meant that several one-on-one magic battles had to take place at the same time. And while the intermediate course had used a specific clearing in the woods, the advanced course would be using much more of the forest obstacles and all in order to train for actual combat. That also meant that, as long as you hid behind the trees, the teachers wouldn't see you, and you could do whatever you wanted. Louis opened and closed his scraped-up fists. "I'll dodge and parry for a bit, and when it's time to land the finishing blow, I'll just do it behind the trees so nobody sees." Students could apply to bring in personal weapons or magical items for advanced course magic battles. Louis, though, had chosen to forego even his short staff. While having it made his mana control more stable, it got in the way of his more physical methods. He couldn't bear to think what might happen if he accidentally broke the thing. Lionel, on the other hand, had gotten permission from the teacher to bring in a sword. The magic battle barrier nullified physical attacks, and that went for swords, too. Which can mean only one thing. "Begin," announced Solo. Instantly, Lionel drew his sword and began to chant. As he finished, red flames exploded around his blade. This was blade magic, a type of imbuement magecraft that infused objects with mana. Blade magic was popular in the neighboring kingdom of Landa, but you didn't see it very often at Minerva's. It boasted shorter chants than regular magecraft and could be maintained for long periods of time at minimal mana expense. However, it demanded a high degree of skill in both magecraft and swordsmanship. "Here I come." With a loud cry, Lionel dashed toward Louis. By then, Louis had already finished a chant of his own. He lifted his fist and blocked Lionel's downswing. It wasn't just his hand, of course. He'd created a shield-shaped defensive barrier on the surface of his fist, a little larger than his palm. Punching people was faster than flinging attack spells all over. That was why Louis had developed his own fighting style that incorporated the kind of physical strikes allowed by the nullifying barrier. Almost no mags punched enemies with barriers. It confused most opponents when they first saw it, making them vulnerable. Lionel, however, remained calm. When Louis blocked his opening strike, the prince went for another, this time aimed at the left side of Louis's body. Louis jumped backward, chanting all the while, then erected a shield barrier on the top of his right foot and kicked. "Yeah." Lionel kept his arm close to his side as he blocked the kick. "Ugh," he grunted. "Good one." In a magic battle, your mana depleted according to the damage you took. The damage from Louis's barrier kick counted, so it must have taken a chunk out of the prince's mana. The blade magic flames flickered and swayed, growing slightly dimmer. "What the? Is he?" Ignoring the damage he'd just taken, Lionel stepped in deep and loosed a slash at Louis's left shoulder. At the moment, Louis was keeping up the barriers on his right hand and foot, and the prince had noticed the weak defenses on his left side. Louis immediately launched himself into a slide, dodging the slash by moving straight past Lionel, then regaining his footing. Immediately, the prince struck again. Louis blocked this one, a downward strike from overhead, with his right hand. As Lionel's blade magic clashed with Louis's defensive barriers, the latter didn't budge, while the former was clearly losing force. Now Louis was certain. "I knew it. He's got a good sword arm, but his magecraft is pretty shabby." Lionel was using blade magic because they were inside a barrier that nullified all physical strikes. Outside of it, he'd be more than strong enough with just a sword. But each time he swung and Louis blocked it with a barrier, his mana trickled down. And that really frustrated Louis. Devising a new plan, Louis continued to dodge Lionel's slashes, all the while guiding him deeper into the woods, little by little. The magic battle barrier covered a large area of the forest, but Louis knew exactly how far it reached. Any moment now. As they came within mere feet of the barrier, Lionel's blade magic lost its shine. The prince's stern features twisted into a scowl, and he hung his head, frustrated. "I don't have the mana to maintain my blade magic," he said. "I have lost." "Come on. It's a waste to settle this with a simple magic battle, don't you think?" asked Louis, grinning. He pointed beyond the barrier with his thumb. "Let's continue this outside the barrier." Lionel's eyes widened in confusion. Despite his stern countenance, such expressions looked oddly charming on him. Ignoring the prince's surprise, Louis exited the barrier and beckoned to him. "Hurry it up." "You would have us engage in a pure contest of strength?" asked Lionel. "Yeah, 'cause you're so bad at magecraft. This magic battle is boring. Let's have a regular one." Lionel grunted at Louis's scathing criticism, but he met the boy's gaze nevertheless. The prince's eyes were a beautiful sea blue color. "I see. You're giving yourself a handicap, since I'm inexperienced with magecraft." Lionel breathed out sharply through his nose and placed his sword on the ground. Louis figured he could have simply tossed it aside, but the prince did everything carefully. As expected of a royal, he thought. The prince, his footsteps heavy, left the magic battle barrier, then turned to face Louis. "I accept your challenge. Let us begin, Louis Miller." Louis grinned with satisfaction and pounded his right fist into his left palm, producing a clear smack. "Just what I was hoping for." He dove at Lionel, attempting to drive the heel of his palm into the prince's jaw. But Lionel caught it in his own large hand. Louis decided to throw his other fist, too. The prince stopped that one as well. The fight had become a pure contest of strength. Lionel was clearly blessed with a better constitution and build. His muscles weren't just there for show. He was well trained and had a body to match. The prince groaned as his thick arms drove Louis back. "Prodigy." Louis, not wanting to lose, put all his strength into his fists, as if trying to crush the prince's hands. Rah! He dug in his heels, braced himself, and then leaned his head back to break the stalemate with a headbutt. Realizing this, Lionel gritted his teeth and pushed his own forehead forward. Wham! The sound was like two boulders ramming together. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. But Louis was the first to fall over. His eyes had rolled up into the back of his head. When Louis regained consciousness, he saw two sets of eyes peering down at him. Lionel's were worried, while Rosalie's were exasperated. The difference was stark. "Ah, you're awake. Dr. Woodman, Louis has awoken," Lionel cried out in that uncomfortably loud voice of his. Rosalie fixed Louis with a frigid stare. When he sat up, a cloth filled with ice fell to the floor with a wet thump. Rosalie quickly picked it up and pressed it to his forehead. She was angry. Quietly angry, but angry all the same. "What were you thinking, headbutting Prince Lionel?" she asked. "It was the only way to win. Even though I lost." Louis swallowed his excuse, though. He knew that if he argued, he'd only make Rosalie angrier. For now, he stayed quiet and held the ice pack to the bump on his forehead. Then he looked between Rosalie and Lionel. The prince's gaze was uncomfortably warm, while Rosalie's was icy cold, complete opposites. Next to them, Woodman closed his book. "Prince Lionel carried you all the way here on his back, Miller. You gave this old man quite a fright." "Seriously?" Louis grimaced. Someone should have stopped him. According to Woodman, though, the sight of a desperate Lionel running through school with Louis on his back wasn't the kind of thing anyone felt comfortable interrupting. Apparently, Lionel had been talking to him while he was still unconscious, well, more like yelling, really. "Rah! Snap out of it. Get a grip." Louis had never been so embarrassed in his life. He was speechless. Woodman crossed his legs and shrugged. "Hard to believe you were carried all the way here by a handsome storybook prince. If I were a girl, my heart would have skipped a beat. Though you do have an awfully big lump on your head now." "Yeah, from headbutting that stupid prince. And losing," replied Louis sardonically. Lionel, who was sitting down, suddenly looked up. Then he put his hands on his knees and hastily bowed. "My apologies," he exclaimed. "It would seem my head is as hard as a stone." "Sir, you don't need to apologize," said Rosalie coldly. "In fact, you needn't concern yourself at all." Lionel frowned, his thick brows knotting. "But Rosalie, I'm the one who knocked him unconscious. Louis only got what he deserved." "Hey, wait a minute," interrupted Louis, looking between the two of them. To tell the truth, he'd been curious about something ever since waking up. Rosalie was a very earnest, serious girl. And yet, despite being right next to royalty, she wasn't acting very formal. She was polite, of course, but she seemed somehow familiar with him. The same went for Lionel. And he was on a first-name basis with her, too. Louis couldn't let that slide. "You two are friends?" Rosalie and Lionel nodded at almost the same time. "I've met him several times through my father's job," explained Rosalie. "Indeed," said Lionel. "She also showed me around the school festival." "Huh. Really? I see." Louis frowned. Keeping the ice to his forehead, he flopped back down onto the bed. Then he rolled over, meaning to turn his back to the two of them only to come face to face with Lionel's attendant, Nate. "Gaia! Where'd you come from?" cried Louis in surprise. Nate, who had been hiding his presence this entire time, answered like a whispering wind. "Queen Vilma ordered me to watch over the prince, since he's a bit mischievous. I can let a few things slide, but if you could restrain yourself, it would really help. I don't want anything too dangerous to happen." As he whispered, his face remained as impassive as always. Louis thought he'd be angry at the delinquent who'd picked a fight with his beloved prince, but the boy was so expressionless that it was hard to read any emotion in his face. Louis stayed silent, and Nate continued, his voice weak. "I've told everyone that you tripped during the magic battle, and that is how you were wounded. You fell, hit your head, and the prince carried you away. Rumors are spreading like wildfire, but you have only yourself to blame." Louis sat up cross-legged on the bed and glared at Nate. "I can fight you next time if you want, you know." "I'd rather not. It would be troublesome if I accidentally killed you." For a boy with such a small voice, this attendant had a lot of nerve. Why was that? "Please just think of me as a wall that happens to speak from time to time." On the other side of Louis's bed, Lionel spoke up. "No need to be like that, Nate. We should both openly enjoy our lives here at school. You may have forgotten, sir, but I'm a bit too old to attend the advanced course." "Eh?" grunted Louis, narrowing his eyes at Nate. The boy had a plain face and short black hair. He was of average height and build, nothing about him particularly stood out. He appeared to be in his mid-teens. To be honest, Lionel, with his stern features, looked even older than he did. "I'll be 27 this year," said Nate. "I've only been allowed to enroll at Minerva's as a special exception to guard the prince." Louis unconsciously pressed his hand to his throbbing forehead and moaned. "From today forth, you'd better start calling yourself old man." 27, cackled Woodman. "If you ask this old man, he's still far too young for that." "Wow, Louis, that's a big lump. It's all puffy and swollen." The day after losing his headbutt battle with Lionel was a holiday, so Louis had come to Goara's place a little early in the afternoon to help out. Sally kept poking the bump on his forehead. "Did that hurt?" "Hey, did it?" Louis shoved the carrot he'd just finished peeling at Sally and yelled, "Of course it hurts, you nitwit. Quit touching it. And I'm done peeling these carrots." "Oh, no. Louis, you're so scary. Anyway, it's about to get crowded in here, so go take everyone's orders." Louis clucked his tongue and looked into the store proper. Noon was approaching, and the seats were steadily filling up. In another 30 minutes, the place would be mobbed. The door chime jingled. More customers. Carrying plates of finished food, Louis looked toward the entrance and called out, "Welcome to Goara's." "Huh." 3 people had just walked inside, Lionel, wearing plain clothes, as if no one would recognize him, along with Nate and Rosalie. As Louis stood there, baffled, Lionel called back, We're here for some food. Louis silently stared at Nate and Rosalie. Nate spoke, his voice small. Please think of me as a wall that happens to eat food. I guess walls can do anything these days, huh? Hey, Rosalie, what are you all doing here, anyway? Rosalie, who was out of her uniform and wearing a blouse and skirt, spoke unusually quickly. The prior, he wanted to take a look around town, so I'm acting as his guide. Indeed, added Lionel. Also, that soup at the school festival was sublime. I had Nate figure out which shop it came from. The lump on Louis's forehead began to sting. He pressed a hand to it, not knowing how to respond. The owner, Goa, called out in surprise from behind the counter. Friends o' yours, Liel Lu? Hey, Lo, here's a first. Friends. The boy has friends. Oh, your friends are here? That's nice, said Lo genially. No, it's not, thought Louis. It seemed even Sally wanted to get in on the action. Wait, they're your friends, Louis? Hey, there's even a girl. Is she your girlfriend? I need to know. To top it all off, even the patrons started whistling and grinning. Hey, Liel Lu, one called out. Which one are you really after? Sally or that girl? As Sally and the guests carried on, Rosalie muttered the words Liel Lu to herself. Nate distanced himself from the situation, again claiming he was merely a wall. And Lionel, standing perfectly straight, asked Louis for some bean soup, his voice stupidly loud. At last, Louis grasped his head with both hands and began to wail. Everybody sit the heck down, shut up, and eat your food.